Good evening and welcome to the March 25th, 2015 business meeting of the Board of School Trustees of Richmond Community Schools. Please stand for the pledge. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
We will begin this evening with the reading of our mission statement.
Richmond Community Schools guide students on pathways of learning to a future of limitless possibilities.
Thank you, Kelly. And now the reading of our vision.
Richmond Community Schools, a community nurturing mind, body, and spirit to prepare students for lives of choice, purpose, and service.
Thank you, Susie. And now we are ready to celebrate the joy of learning.
Yes, and that this evening will be our math presentation. Mr. Millis has arranged for some of our staff members to be here to show a video.
Well, it won't be a video, and actually, we might get several of you engaged in learning tonight.
Okay, well, all right.
And this year, we've had the opportunity to pilot some software called MathSpace, and I had the opportunity this week to attend a conference at Dennis, and we had some great teachers showing how to use it, how they use it with their students. So I'll introduce Mr. Thomas, Sam Thomas, our science and math coach, and then he'll introduce our teachers. You probably know a few of these people. And yes, our veteran teachers can be technology leaders. So.
The joy of learning happens when you find some technology that helps you be a smarter and more efficient teacher.
Yes.
And work with kids in impressive ways. So tonight we have, is it 4 teachers who are the pioneers of using this MathSpace technology? And they've been using it with their students quite a bit, and they're going to just take about a minute, each of them, to let you know a little bit about MathSpace and how it's used with students. There's one iPad that's back there and on that end of the table. I've got another one. I think all 4 of you can just come up, and I'll just introduce all of you real quick. Tiana Washington has been using this with her students at early college, and she's going to probably be speaking first. Nikki Himmerling and Lisa Wagner are co-teachers. Nikki is special education, and Lisa is a regular teacher, and one regular classroom teacher. And these guys as a team already differentiate so much. It's hard to believe that a piece of technology could help them do it even better, and you'll hear a little bit about that. And then Bill Campbell is also a regular teacher, and he's going to tell you how he's using this with his 8th grade students as well. So I'm going to come around and find somebody else who will do this, and Tiana, you're going to jump in and say something about MathSpace.
Okay. When this was first introduced to me, I thought, oh goodness, here's another thing I have to learn, and not just me, but my fellow math students as well. But once I got to see what it's all about and what the features it has, it made it, actually a good tool to have used in my classroom, especially in early college where I have many different levels, mostly high ability students. And so there are some students who are really fast and needs to get that extra push, or those are a little dragging behind, just need a little support. So I like this program because it kind of gives a sense of mastery. I'm able to see exactly when my students have a mastery, and I can set that at a certain percentage, whether it's 70, 80, but most of the time I do 100%. I feel like 100%, to me, that's a mastery of a concept. So for students, they can see different colors, whether it's green, which means they have mastery, yellow, they're almost there, red, like, okay, we got to back up and, regroup kind of thing. But students can also earn badges too, and of course they all earn little things like that, or points, and they kind of get competitive on who earned the most points in 1 week. So it challenges them as well. But also I'm able to, and I love this part too, because I kind of threaten a little bit. They're like, if they're fooling around, for example, I can say, well, guys, I can log in to MathSpace. I can go click on your name, and I can see what problem you are, and I can see what you are doing. So you can't just be on another website. I can actually see what you're doing. So probably best to do what you're supposed to be doing. And so that works 99% of the time. So I just want to speak on that.
I'm kind of the co-teacher in Lisa's room, and one of the things that we're always looking for is how to differentiate. We have a lot of kids that need extra support within the classroom. This is a program that allows us to easily and quickly do that. The feedback is immediate, so you don't have to wait for them to get through the entire skill first. They get, like she was saying, the red, the yellow, and the green. It allows us to pull kids back so that we can work with a small group of kids. Mrs. Wagner, myself, we can be doing 2 groups at a time, and then kids can be working independently. If they're working independently and they have a question or they need help, there's like a next or a hint button, and it kind of scaffolds your hints. So it kind of starts off small with like maybe a little reminder prompt, hey, remember you need to add all 4 sides. If that doesn't work, they can hit it again, and it'll give them the actual formula to do the skill. So it kind of scaffolds things down from there. And that kind of goes into my part.
If a student does click the hint button, the program is very smart, and it won't give them credit for that problem. It will give them another problem just like it. I did have one student that clicked the hint button and did several problems and came to me and said, Mrs. Wagner, I've done 200 some problems and it has not given me my 100% mastery yet. So I could go in and look, and I could see which problems the student had done. I could see that they had done that, and the program didn't give them their 100% mastery because they had not shown the program that they understood how to do the problems independently. So I talked with the student about that, and they learned how to use the hint button more wisely. So it is very an intuitive program. Then their tech support is awesome. There's a feedback button over on the right-hand side. You can see on the screen if the student's doing a problem, they can click on the feedback button. For example, we've had some instances where it says nearest tenth. Well, if it's 55.0 and the student puts 55, it wasn't counting the answer correct. So we clicked on feedback. We let them know that. Within 24 hours, they emailed us back. They fixed the problem. So they're great at getting back with us and fixing things. This is the student version. This is what the student sees when they log in. So if they're getting ready to start the lesson, they can see a lesson with some explanations. When they're actually ready to get into the problem, they would click Let's Go. I'm going to close that video. So they would have this problem to do. So, for example, the blue X shows they tried to do something and it didn't work. They used an X for multiplication apparently, but when there's a variable involved, they don't want to do that. So when they're trying to solve this, they can solve it and just write the answer at the bottom, or if they want to show their steps, they could actually write the problem down here. And it would write the problem down here. If they want to show that they're undoing the multiplication by dividing, they could write that down here. Now, if they clicked check, it's going to give them a yellow check. The yellow checks mean you're correct, but it needs to be simplified. The kids learn that immediately. Yellow checks are good, but they're not perfect. I have to do something else. So then they would know that, well, I need to get rid of my 2 divided by 2. That needs simplified. So they can get rid of things by trying to delete them, or they can just trash that, hit the trash can and start from scratch. Look up above. They can get the pencil. They can say, well, the 2 over 2 becomes a giant 1. That's going to go away. So I'm going to be left with x equals. They can use the top for scratch. The 10 divided by 2 is 5. Once they get their answer, they can go down below, write it, click the check. When they get the green check, then they know that they're right. It'll tell them they're done because they see the continue at the bottom. They can go to the next problem. So it's very interactive. It's great. We could go in and see their work that they've done. If the students aren't showing the work and just showing the answers, we wouldn't see what's on the scratch paper at the top. If they're getting problems wrong, it's going to give them more problems just like those. If they're getting them right, it's going to take them to higher level problems. The level of problems are wonderful, where when we did volume of a cylinder, I would just give them cylinders. In this program, it will give them a cylinder within a cylinder, and it wants to have the volume between the two cylinders. When it has some of the circumference problems, it's giving them some flower-looking pictures and wanting them to find the perimeter. They'll find the perimeter, so it involves using the straight lines and finding the circumference of the circular parts. Some of them, it'll be a fraction like 1/4, so they're finding 1/4 of the circumference. Some of them, it gives them degree measurements. So they have to know, well, 33 degrees out of 360 of the circumference. It's pushing them further than I've ever pushed my students before, but the kids are doing it. Where before, I don't think they would with this program on the iPad. They come to me and ask me for help because they want to get it done. So I think it's wonderful.
How often do you use the program?
We've been using it every day. We can also get our bell work from it, which is something that I've started just doing recently. I've been doing my short cycle assessments, which I think Mr. Campbell might talk about, or you going to talk about that. And when I do those, I can print a bell work assignment that has 5 questions on it. And then if I print that, I get out of it, I do print preview again. It prints me a new one with new numbers. And I can do that as many times as I want to click the back arrow and go back into it. So we can use that as bell work. So we're also doing class instruction before they go into the math space. Before we did the circumference lesson, we talked about, with the class instruction perimeter, we talked about circumference. We did some problems with finding the circumference of a circle where we used pi, the pi key on the calculator. We used 3.14, we used 22/7, because this program has them doing all 3. Where before, I just used 3.14 because that's what iStep did, usually. But this one has them getting experience with all of them. It shows them where pi comes from. It has a video embedded in it that shows them by rolling a circle that it's taking the diameter 3 times to fit around the circumference of the circle. So instead of us spending hours in the evening trying to find this stuff and not necessarily getting quality lessons, we're spending time figuring out how to implement and get the small groups and spending time with our kids, helping them learn the material. So I've been very impressed with it.
Thank you.
I think you took up 8 minutes by yourself. All right, first of all, this is, wrong thing. Lanyard, this came from one of my ex-principals, because she's a Kentucky fan. And I've taught 36 years, so at 35 years, because the school system doesn't recognize people that have taught 35 years, my other ex-principal gave me something last year, too. That's all I want to say for that. Anyway, my experience teaching, I think, over the years, probably the biggest thing I can see with the program is it lets us challenge kids that sometimes I didn't get to challenge, because in just a regular class setting, when you're going over material, some kids get it really fast, some kids, it takes a long time. And so when your focus is on really helping the kids that are moving slowly get to the point that you want them to, the other kids are kind of sitting idly by. This program doesn't make it out. I mean, it allows them to, again, expand their thinking, do creative things with the iPads. There are questions that I know Mrs. Wagner and Mr. Thomas had trouble answering, and as we're going through some of these problems, I'm finding problems that I'm having to look things up again too, because I haven't done, it is a challenge for them. So the kids that, I would kind of see being really bored in class, and I felt bad, but I knew I had to work with the one-on-one kids more, it allows these kids to take off and really get ahead. It is a big factor. I've seen, like I said, I've seen kids that I know would be bored to death. They'll tell me they're bored to death anyway, regardless, but They have really taken off with the program. And I think the hands-on part of it, being able to write on the iPads, we could use the program on laptops, and I know Mrs. Wagner has at times to check them out, but they'd still have to do all the work on paper and record it. Just on the laptop, all they can do is put the answer on. With the iPads, the kids actually write everything on there. They can do everything. There's no need for any paper or anything. Some of them may use some just because they're so used to it, but and the short cycle assessment she mentioned, this came from Dr. Benjamin, so I want to make sure I bring his name up. He's been a part of our curriculum, I think, for the last few years, but one of the big things he pushed with math was taking smaller chunks of the math and giving them shorter tests, either 5 to 10 questions each time. And this program allows you to make them very quickly, and you can practice them. You can make sure everything's done before the kids ever take it. You can put in overdue days, so for kids that are absent or kids that, are just struggling with the review or going over things, so they have extra time before they take the test. So I can't say anything negative about it. It's been all positive, too. And we've tried to use it. Mrs. Wagner started before I did. She started, I don't know, whenever Mr. Thomas got it. I was a little leery because I'm a little leery about everything at 36 years of teaching. But once I got started, it was great. It really is. Thank you.
Thank you.
So much, thank you.
That's our presentation.
Thank you.
Thank you so
I
much.
did,
Thank you.
I asked Bill, so how does this fit with the textbook and doing problems in class? He said, that's it. It's the textbook. The kids can do their problems here. The program evaluates if it's right or wrong. It tells them why. They know exactly where they're at. So it was pretty good testimony about moving from that kind of format to a different one.
I'll just say, the only reason there aren't more pioneers is teachers really need this technology to use this program. And as we build that capacity, I think we'll find a lot more teachers that are real happy with some of the options that we have out there. Thank you so much.
Thank you,
Thank
and
you very much, thank you.
thank you for all that you do, all of you. It is appreciated. And it sounds like your classrooms are alive and kids are doing what kids need to be doing. So thank you. Okay, we are at our first public commentary part of our meeting. And I would just like to remind us of the board's protocol for our public speaking portion. We recognize the value of public comment on educational issues and the importance of allowing members of the public to express themselves on corporation matters. The board wants to ensure that the public feels welcome and that the concerns are answered in a timely, efficient manner. So the following protocol has been established, and it is, we have set aside 2 30-minute sessions during each board member. Persons who want to address the board may reserve time on any board meeting agenda. And the maximum time for individual speakers is 5 minutes. And I believe Mrs. Stewart will be our timekeeper. So we ask that you be considerate of others and stick to that 5 minutes. We expect personal decorum and factual information, and the president reserves the right to interrupt a speaker when the statement is too lengthy, personally directed, abusive, obscene, or if it interferes with the orderly conduct of the meeting. Speakers voicing a complaint may be advised to complete a written form and submit it. And comments recognizing the work of staff and students are certainly always welcome. And we just welcome you to the podium and ask that you abide by the by the protocol that we have adopted as the Board of School Trustees. So with that in mind, we are ready for Mrs. Stewart to tell us who is coming forth.
First, we have Stephanie Stout.
First, I want to thank Dr. Poindexter and members of the board for allowing me to speak this evening. My name is Stephanie Stout. My husband Trevor and I both teach in the corporation, proudly. We have a daughter who is currently a third grader at Hibbard. We are definitely here to support Hibbard School, but as parents, we are definitely extremely concerned about the programming and the high ability programming, where it is going next year, what is the direction of the programming, how it will accommodate high ability learners. In my letter that my husband and I wrote, we posed questions, and I'd like to ask those again, potentially hoping for some answers, and also to share some solutions that my husband and I and some other parents brainstormed as well. So the questions that I posed in our email, will there be high ability classrooms taught by teachers with high ability training at the elementary schools for the 3rd and 4th graders, similar in philosophy and setting as they are now present at Hibbard? Or will the 4th graders simply be placed back in a general education classroom with students of all academic levels? Our second question was, if not placed in the high ability classroom for a full day, will there be pull-out opportunities for areas such as language arts, reading, and math? Our daughter Allison is currently a 3rd grader taking 4th grade math. Next year, based on teacher recommendations, she will be a 4th grader taking 5th grade math. And my husband and I want to know, will she be given the opportunity to take 5th grade math, being in a K through 4 classroom? She also reads at a 6th grade level. How will language arts and reading help to accommodate her in a K through 4 building? Will next year's 4th graders have to retest to go back to Hibbard as a 5th grader? What will happen to the 3rd, 4th grade teachers that are currently at Hibbard? What was the philosophy for bringing the 3rd and 4th graders to the Hibbard building in the first place? If elementary school sizing and staffing was an issue, will that still be an issue if students are sent back to their home schools? My husband and I really just would like to know what the direction is for high ability programming in our corporation. And as far as transportation costs, we are interested to know what is the transportation cost. In looking at board minutes, we didn't really see the cost broken down. You know, how much does it cost to bus the 3rd and 4th graders to Hibbard and, you know, from Hibbard versus the 5th through 8th graders who are also there. So we very much appreciate you looking at those questions and helping to give us an answer. Solutions that we came up with, my husband and I and just a few parents that are also in the program. Is there potential to bus the 3rd and 4th graders to Test and Dennis and have 2 locations for busing instead of the 5 elementaries, if I'm correct with that number? Eliminating the need for a shuttle. Change the start time at Hibbard so that all students 3 through 8th grade start at the same time and ride the same buses. And if the decision to eliminate the 3rd and 4th grade is inevitable from Hibbard, could there be a possibility of having a 4th grade, 5th grade bridge year next year so that the current 3rd graders get to stay as 4th graders and not go back to their home schools as 4th graders and then back to Hibbard as 5th graders? Your time and your consideration in allowing me to speak, I really do appreciate. Obviously, as parents of a 3rd grade at Hibbard, we would love our daughter to be a 4th grader at Hibbard. Our daughter, when I spoke with her about it, wrote down her thoughts, and I included her letter as part of the email, so I hope that you got a chance to see that. I'll just end it.
45 seconds.
Okay, I'll just end it on a quote from my daughter, who eloquently expressed, "Without going to Hibbard, we wouldn't get to stretch our brains and challenge ourselves. Hibbard makes me feel good, and it makes learning fun." And as a mom, and an educator. That's, that's the most important thing. So your consideration and your answers to the questions would be appreciated.
Thank you, Stephanie.
We have Mark Brunton.
I sent stuff over there this week, that's why I know.
Waddle myself up here. Excuse me as I get my gear ready. Is your IT guy available? Thanks for allowing me to speak today. I appreciate your time. As said earlier, I'm Mark Brunton Jr. I'm here to talk about the same issue as Stephanie did. Just a little background on myself. I'm the managing broker for Better Homes and Gardens First Realty Group, and I'm also a partner with Better Homes and Gardens Big Hill in Ohio. We have locations in Richmond, Eaton, Ohio, all through the Dayton market and as far away as Columbus, Ohio. I'm a parent of a 3rd, 5th, and 7th grade student at Hibbard. I'm an RCS alumni. I'm a husband of an RCS teacher for 16 years, a lifelong Richmond resident, and a proud product of this community. I've worked with Dr. Borf, Ray Wolpe, Mrs. Gibbs, and know many of the administration, teachers, and several of the past and current board members personally. I come here today as a concerned citizen. You see, I have a unique viewpoint of working with families that are considering this community, people that tour the facilities that you have. Several times each month, I get to see through the eyes of these families. I've taken these families through just about every school district in and around our community. My wife and I have personally considered and toured Seton, Community Christian, and the Friends School. We found our solution right here with the Richmond GT School. Look, you guys have a special product. People that come into this community are oftentimes impressed and excited, and what they remember oftentimes is the fact that we have a special 3-4 program, something that no one else has that's unique to our market. From a marketing standpoint, the self-contained GT program, beginning at such an early age, is a shining star for this community, something that makes us very attractive, something they remember. We need a product that is better than everyone else's, something that draws them here versus our competition. As a 3rd grader, my daughter was offered a position at Hibbard. It was with the understanding that she would continue in a self-contained GT school through the 8th grade, taught by a specially trained GT teacher. What will she be offered next year, considering we live in the Westview district? If she returns to a regular classroom, how does that separate us from other communities? Will students from Vale, Fairview, Star, Crestdale, and Westview be offered the same quality of service as the other schools? Will it be equitable? Will it be fair for all students? As an owner of a large business, I understand large budgets. When changes need to be made, it needs to be well thought out with tremendous consideration done by those that understand our history and our past, and it shouldn't be taken lightly. What is the board's consideration for cutting the 3-4 program? Is it mainly expenses? Well, I would urge you to consider income. What if parents like myself no longer find the new program attractive? Don't you think RCS will lose now and even more into the future? I know we can come up with a solution, something that's better for our kids than just changing programs. It's my understanding we've paid a large sum of money for a study of the high ability program due at the end of May. How will these results be considered? I urge you as board members to visit the programs you are considering making changes to if you've not done so already. And as you make school times, starting times next year, consistent with different grades,
1 minute, Mark.
why couldn't we transport 3-4 graders on the buses with the older Logos students? This would only be a 1-year larger span than what you're transporting now at the regular elementary schools, and could this be a viable option? This board has an opportunity to keep a successful, self-contained 3-4 GT program as presented, something that makes our product unique from others. Let's keep our momentum going and prove to this community that RCS is the best choice of services. Thank you for considering my comments, and most importantly, for serving our community, RCS, and its students.
Thank you, Mark.
Rhonda Wilds.
Good evening. I had a PowerPoint, but I guess we're not doing PowerPoints, so that was my notes. So, but I want to thank you on behalf of the students that I serve, that I advocate for. Whatever, is that someone's notes? Okay. But I love what I do. I feel like I'm such a blessed teacher because I get to work with statistically the top 10% of clientele. And that top 10% typically becomes our leaders in our communities. So I'm very passionate about that opportunity. And regardless of where this ends up, I'm still going to be passionate about that opportunity. Resources, as a former art teacher of 20 years, it's always been an issue. In my own personal life as a child, it was always an issue. So I always think it's like, I tell kids, you know, I was not really supposed to go to college. We didn't have the money. It's like, never let money get in the way of your passion. Never let money get in the way of your dream. And that's not always easy, because I think we all have money issues. So I admire the challenge set before you. But with the students that I serve, many of the students, sometimes we have a misconception about high-ability students. It's like, don't worry about them. They'll be okay. They're smart. Well, that's possibly true. But particularly children of poverty, oftentimes, and I will read this, but in particular, children of poverty, their gifts may be masked by poverty. They need the extra enrichment in order to develop the intellectual skills and tools to think outside the box and to implement the vision that has been created through their gifts. And those children do not have that kind of emotional, social scaffolding at home. And those are the kids I serve. And for that, I'm very thankful. And so if money's the issue, I'll sign up to help raise some money. Unfortunately, I'm not the Lemonade Day director anymore, but there's always money. But particularly with, go back to my notes a bit, the spectrum of services. You have the spectrum of services, and our life skills folks, which I adore. I'm so thankful to be in the building with them. You know, they have a white bus. So at the other end of the spectrum, it's like, I would love to challenge the idea of maybe having a white bus. And the good thing is I could drive it, you know? So it could be like a magic school bus. And so the resources, oftentimes when I was in the buildings, which I was happy, you know, it worked out, but not as, I didn't feel like, I went to Dr. Borf and I said, you know, some of the buildings, I sit on the floor in the hallway. I'm okay, I make it work. Some of the buildings I go, I'm in the music room because it's not that, they don't have music that day. We don't have any desks. We don't have any computers. And I told Dr. Borf, said, can I retire my profession and feel like ethically I did everything I possibly could to prepare those children for the challenging problems that they're going to inherit as the leaders in our communities that we gave them? And I said, I struggle with that. So now's the time for me to try to figure that out. Not be regret after I'm retired, you know, I didn't see that way to do that. So I'll leave with Einstein's quote. It's not that I'm smart. It's just that I studied the problem longer. And so what I ask is to open up the conversation. And, you know, and to keep, I know that we want all of our children to be able to think outside the box and to be able to be, you know, there's no glass ceiling. But particularly with the students that I serve, they need that structure. They need that help. Also, I've talked to the Cope Environmental Center. I could partner with them and kind of think, as they're build with them. They're excited about that. The Wayne County Historical Museum, every year I partner with the museum. Kids take over the museum. So maybe I would like to say, I will go out in the community and say, hey, let me speak to your organization. I need a magic school bus. The students that I work with can help inspire this community. We want these kids to stay here. We want these kids to be sitting on this board. And so I understand the financial piece. I'm willing to do, what was that? Okay, time's up. All right, thank you.
Thank you, Fonda.
Brad Burns.
Evening, everyone. My name is Brad Burns. Along with everybody else here, we're just some concerned parents about the news that was dropped on us suddenly. We were in parent-teacher conferences last week and heard that it changed so quickly. We heard that our son, Mason, third grader, Highland, stand up. Stand up. Parent-teacher conferences went well, said that he'd be welcome next year, fourth grader, return to Highland. And then we heard a day later that there may be no program next year. So, you know, we just tried to prepare as best we could for that news. And then we heard about the opportunity about the meeting tonight to come forth. Now, excuse me, I'm not a public speaker any stretch of the imagination, so please bear with me while I go through a few thoughts. Appreciate everybody listening to what I have to say. I'm not here to solve the problem. You know, that's the folks, you know, you guys would be willing to do that. There were some great ideas that were brought up by some of the parents. But I just think that if we don't rush through it, if transportation is truly the only problem that we have, we can push through that. I mean, because we're gonna lose so much if we don't. I know my son, he works so hard to get into this program, and I'm sure he's along with several other kids that have done the same. And I know that we came from a school that we were looking at other alternatives along some of the other parents where we went to Seton. Would have went there, but cost is a factor, of course. They have a voucher program, and we wasn't real sure if he would be able to be available in the following year. So one of our concerns was we lived at the same address for 7 years, and my sons attended 3 schools. Started off at Highland, they shut down. We tried to get into Crestdale because that's where all of his friends were going. Didn't have any luck there. Went to ESA, reluctantly, but we made the best. Jody Logman, fantastic woman you guys have there. She took on the high abilities program and ran with it and gave our kid a great education and owe the world to her. But since then, we ventured out, had the opportunity to go to Hibbard, and it's just been amazing. The opportunities that he's had to learn, the trips he's been able to take, the friends he's made, the teachers, the staff, the faculty, outstanding. And I mean, you guys hit it. I mean, you guys wanted a place where these kids could go, centralized location, to where everybody's on the same page, and we're moving forward in a community that, quite frankly, is crumbling around us. Been here 37 years, and you see a lot of the bad that goes on. Kid comes home, and he talks about all the things that are being said, all the bullying that's going on, the things he has to deal with. And the last 2 years, or the last year has just been absolutely amazing. So I think you guys, I mean, if it's transportation, we can do, I mean, you guys really just look at some of the alternatives that we have. And please take all these things into consideration when you make your decision. And I appreciate you guys' time. Thanks.
Thank you very much.
Monica Burns. Good evening, everyone. Believe it or not, that's my baby boy. I'm Mason's grandmother. And I saw the struggles that Mason had going through school. Once he got into the first grade, he was so far advanced from the other kids that he was bored and he was constantly in trouble. Then, when he tested out and got into the logo program, he has blossomed. He is really doing so well. Him, and I'm sure a lot of the other kids have done the same thing. I know budgets are tight, but you have to also understand, with the voucher program now being available to kids, if these kind of programs in the public school system go away, more and more kids are going to take advantage of the voucher program. I'm not saying it's not a good program, but when they do that, that takes funding away from our public school systems. I know from being involved in government The budgets are tight everywhere. You, as the school board, have the opportunity to go over your budget with a fine-tooth comb, pick and choose where the places that you need to cut. And I'm sure that maybe the parents, if the transportation is a deal, work out some kind of a program with the parents. Maybe they can do a carpooling. Don't make the kids suffer from this program. If you do away with it being held at Hibbard, please find some alternatives at the schools where the kids will be, where that program can be picked up locally with them. Don't make the kids pay because our state legislatures, in all their wisdom, put in property tax caps, have taken from the education fund on the state level, and it's been hurting our government entities and our public schools. Private schools are great, they are, but I also believe in the public school system. I think that part of the problem that we have are the larger classrooms. And you have to start on the bottom level where the kids are in the classroom. And then when you have the high ability kids like my grandson, how do you work with all of them at the same time to keep them all incorporated and interested in what's going on in the classroom? I just beg you as a grandparent, and I've seen what good the logo program has done for my grandson and other kids, please look at the budget that you have available to you and try to do everything you possibly can to keep this program open for these kids. Thank you.
Thank you, Monica.
Ken Frederick.
Good evening. My
Good
name is
evening.
Ken Frederick. My son's a third grader at Hibbard. Also, like Stephanie's child, is in fourth grade math. My son, when he was at Crestdale in the second grade, the teacher was having to create programs toward the last 6, 8 weeks of the year on a computer for him to do because he did it all. And there was nowhere for him to go. He'd come home, and there were times where he'd get extremely depressed because he's like, school's boring. He's like, there's nothing for me to do. And then the one day that he would get to go to Hibbard and Wings, I mean, he'd come home, his eyes were lit up. He was real happy. And since he's been in the program all year this year, I mean, he actually gets up and looks forward to going to school. He comes home and he's talking to kids on the phone. They're talking about what book they're reading or what subject or project they're working on and what they could do to challenge each other. I mean, it's like a different kid. During the parent-teacher conference last week, I found out that my son is he's in the top 1% in the country in reading and math. Now, to think about him going back, and not that there's nothing wrong with the regular public school, but like in my personal situation, used to be a business owner, so I understand finances. But I live out on Porterfield Road, and I don't know the ins and outs of the transportation problem, but I know that there's 4 buses that come out on my street twice a day. There's not that many kids out there. There has to be some time changes, there's got to be something that we can trim or combine to where there's not that many buses coming out there where they can go to school at the same time, whatever it takes. But this is way too awesome an opportunity for kids for them to say, sorry, son, you got to go back here because there's not enough money to get you back and forth to school. Even if you, I just don't know what the answer is. I just want to come as a concerned parent and a citizen of the community. There just got to be, at some point, we got to say what's more important. You know, these kids being able to thrive and be leaders and wherever they may go, or you know, who knows what happened to them. They may go back to that school, their home schools. They may get real depressed like my son did. They may shut down. And, you know, I think that's something we really need to consider. And I thank you all for your time.
Thank you very much.
Amanda Enderstrode.
Thank you all for listening to our issues tonight. And I am a mother of 3 high-ability students. My son is in 3rd grade at Hibbard. My daughter is in 7th grade. and my youngest is first grader at Charles, looking forward to her chance to be at Hibbert in third grade also. My challenges tonight is if third grade is put back into the K through 4 program, how will my son be challenged? I know from my daughter, who's in 7th grade, third and fourth grade was not in Hibbert then, that my child's teacher struggled to be able to challenge her through the year. She was in the pull-out program through Wings, but one day is not enough. It's not enough to continually challenge them through the week. So I would like, as a parent, to know how you expect the gen ed teachers to be able to teach the kids who are on the lower end of the spectrum and still be able to challenge the kids who are on the higher end. I know as a teacher myself, I'm a preschool teacher here for RCS, and I know that my focus is on the lower kids. It's just a fact that the focus has to be there. We have to bring those kids up so that they can perform also. So those higher kids, they often get left out a lot in a gen ed classroom. So that is one question I have. I would argue also that the interaction between the 3rd and 4th grade teachers along with the 5th through 8th teachers is important to be able to prepare those kids for the program and 5th through 8th program. Something that RCS has to offer is the Logos program. This is something different that the other school systems around here do not offer. So from a perspective of someone who might look at outside sources for education for my children, I think that it's important for you to consider that also. I don't know that us being here and speaking is even of any importance. I don't know if you've already made up your minds about the program. But if that's the case, then I would urge you to come up with maybe some possible solutions if the program is coming to an end. That perhaps you phase out the program and it doesn't end. My son, was at Charles, then he's at Hibbert, and he's going to go back to Charles, and then possibly back to Hibbert in 5th grade. And I just think that's a little too much for a child to have to do. And I would be interested in possibly phasing it out so that the 3rd graders remain at Hibbert for 4th grade. Also, I know as a parent it would affect me also, but I would be interested in transporting my child. Perhaps it can be an option that, yes, your child has been elected to join the high ability program for 3rd and 4th grade, but you must provide transportation. I know that would affect some, but I think that in an effort to keep this program here, that would be a consideration. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
It's been 30 minutes and we have 5 or 6 other names. Do you want to continue or wait? Okay.
Yeah. What's the board's pleasure?
Continue.
Continue.
Okay. I apologize that I can't pronounce this name. H-I-T-E-S-A. Please say your name.
Yes, I will. Good evening, everyone. My name is Dr. Hitesh Kathuria. I am the chair of the Department of Science at Indiana University East. I run the department. I also oversee the budget, a very tight budget. I understand the constraints. So first of all, I appreciate all that you guys are doing. This is commendable service to the community. I echo all the sentiments that parents have said. I actually see a lot of students sitting here. I have a unique perspective into Hibbert. I have been volunteering there for 4 hours every week since last year, and I have been volunteering in Richmond Community School for the last 4 years every week, for the most part. So my perspective is different. Yes, my son goes to Hibbert, and he gets a very, very excellent academic setup there. What is unique about Hibbert as a volunteer and as a participant in the classroom, I can tell you, having 3rd graders and 4th graders together is like having a junior and a senior in a college together. That kind of stimulation that the kids get there is very rare. Pedagogy-wise, the teachers do a fantastic job. They'll start off with a sum or a question, which is at the 3rd grade level, and very quickly, literally within minutes, graduate to a higher level problem. And I was very surprised to see in a 3rd grade setup, a teacher doing with a 3rd grade student mixed fractions. Simply because the student was able to challenge himself or herself, the teacher pushed the student, and this was phenomenal. This setup was amazing to me, and as a volunteer, I see these literally miracles happening in the class every week. These teachers have done a fantastic job. This setup needs to be preserved. This is one of the few things that keeps, that it's an engine for Richmond community. Our community really needs this kind of an engine. Plus, a promise was made to our children when we enrolled them into Hibbert from their parents' schools. And the promise was a 3rd and a 4th grade in this format. Breaking this promise in the middle violates the trust that the children and their parents have put into the board system. Plus, look at your vision. The vision it says that prepare students for a life of choice. Give students the choice. Again, I echo what all the parents said. Give us an opportunity to drive our children there on a daily basis. And again, it's very easy to say, I do that all the time. I have budget constraints. Find in your budget something that you can cut. Well, sure, I'm sure you have looked into this. My solution is different. I have written NSF and NIH grants to a tune of $700,000 that I got into Indiana University East in the last 7 years. Give me an opportunity to collaborate with Richmond Community Schools. Let's write a grant for the Department of Transportation, Department of Energy. We will find partners who are willing to donate on a grant basis. I'm willing to be the principal investigator and write a grant for the Richmond Community School. I already seen this. There's a math and science partnership grant, something I have been working on for a year, just haven't had a collaborator in this position yet. But let's write a grant together to get money for the Richmond Community Schools. And IU East is a leader in this area. We have written several grants and obtained several thousand, hundreds and thousands of dollars over the last few years. Let's collaborate. Collaboration is the way to go. So that's my solution to the problem. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.
Dave Wolpe.
Hi, everybody. I'll try to be as quick as I can. I thought coming in here that I was passionate about some transportation issues. It's a little less personal for me, but it is very important. I'm representing the Boys and Girls Club, and the paper that I'm having passed around is a typical document. This is an internal document. It doesn't look really nice, but it's just for our own records, and it's a way that we track how many kids get transported to our 3 different facilities in Richmond on both our buses and your buses. And I thought that it might be helpful for you to see those numbers laid out. And this is a very typical month in the school. And as you can see, you transport about, I would say, 1 second, I added this up here, about a little over 200 kids per day to 3 different sites, and we transport about 150 per day to 3 different sites. And that does not include all the kids that just stay at Fairview. One of the things that happened to the Boys and Girls Club when Dr. Boroff started the transportation policy was our attendance skyrocketed. And we now serve over 500 kids a day at 3 different, well, that's counting Hagerstown. It's over 500, but just barely. Hagerstown obviously is not involved in the transportation policy. But what the transportation has done is it's allowed us to help more and more kids with homework and to give them individual tutoring. All 3 of those sites have individual tutors who happen to all be RCS teachers that work for us after school. And those are one-on-one tutoring situations. And also, that doesn't count the hundreds of kids that just get general help with homework and other educational programs. Without transportation, as you've just heard from a lot of people, parents are not available to take their kids to the clubs after school. So I just wanted to make sure that everybody understood what a big deal this is to us to have that kind of transportation. And not only that, but I don't know exactly your costs of transporting an individual child, and I don't want to pretend that I do know. But it seems to me, on just a basic common sense level, if you were to transport all of these kids to 3 different locations, that's probably less expensive than to take many of them to individual homes or to various other drop-off points. So in fact, I would think transporting to the Boys and Girls Club is not really an extra expenditure. But I don't want to pretend like I've actually looked into the figures of that. I don't know that. But I would be pretty confident that that's accurate. And on top of that, we also do a whole lot of transporting of kids every day at our expense, and we're not asking for credit for that, but we do make a big effort to get as many kids as we can to the Boys and Girls Clubs every day. In addition to the fact that we have, and by the way, this is off the subject, but we now have well over 150 kids a day at Fairview alone, which is really exciting for us. So those are all kids that don't have to be transported anywhere either. And most of them tend to be in the neighborhood, so there's not a lot of busing. And as you can also see, a little side note, this box on the side, we, as part of one of our educational programs, our 21st Century Community Learning Center grant, we also are required to transport any kids home that don't have the means to get themselves home. So we do a lot of that too. So my basic point is that transportation for us is a vital part of what we do, and we feel like we work hand in hand with the school system to make the lives of our kids that much better. And we believe that our educational programs and your assistance in that is vital to what we do and to the overall community. So thanks a lot. I appreciate it.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Rowan Aubrey Howard.
Hi.
Mrs. Stewart, could you help get the microphone adjusted a little bit for Aubrey? Hi, Aubrey. How are you?
Rowan.
Rowan, I am so sorry.
That's okay.
It's okay.
Pretty name. Thank you for coming.
Cool girl. Glad to see you up there, Rowan. It's nice to see you again.
Hello, my name is Rowan. I am a third grader in Mrs. Button's class at Hibbard. My experience at Hibbard has been amazing. When I walked in there on the first day of school, my first impression was that I'm going to love it here. I learned more than I thought ever was possible. I used to feel like an ordinary person with an ordinary life. Now I feel like a confident girl with an exciting life. And Hibbard has helped me decide what I'm going to do when I grow up. It helped me realize that, as one of our school quotes is, if I pedal to the metal, I can do anything. If it wasn't for Hibbard, I wouldn't be the person standing in front of you. Thank you for listening patiently and hearing me out.
Thank you very much.
Danny Howard. Danny or Denny Howard?
Yeah, actually, I didn't come prepared to be honest with you.
Okay. Now, we had Mark Brunton sign up twice. Susan Hoffer.
I'm going to readjust this. Hello to all of you, and thank you for listening to all of us. My name is Susan Hoffer, and I have two boys at Hibbard. Many people have already spoken to some of the ideas I had considering transportation, which is my understanding of the major issue with this. So I won't go back over those, but I think some really good ideas have been presented. What I will start with, as I promised my son I would, I have a child, Boaz, who's in the 4th grade there, and he wanted me to read his letter. He thought he was going to come, but we've had some illness at our house today, so I'm here in their stead. It's very short. Please don't put me and my friends in different schools next year. I have good friends, but better than that, I have a great teacher. And if I went to a different school, I wouldn't have the same teacher. My teacher pushes me to be a better student, and I've really learned more this year than I have in the past. Please don't shut down the 3rd and 4th grade. Think about these teachers and their jobs. I'm sure these teachers would like to keep their jobs, please. And there's lots of E's at the end of please. P.S. This is a little humbling now. My mom has always been my teacher. She spent every minute of every day with me. And I think she's very good, but my new teacher spends just as much time with me, and I think she's a little better. Yeah. I think she is too. I'm not a teacher by training. I'm an RN, but I taught my children for several years. And when I went to look for a school to put my children in, to maintain the philosophy that my husband and I had, we spent hours in the hallways of Hibbard last year. To the degrees that the kids were asking, why are they here again? And we found in this school something that held a standard that we did, which was to push our children to their limits, to find who they were. And when my first son last year went into Hibbard School, he was afraid, he was scared, and it was not an easy placement for him. He struggled, but it has pushed him to his limits and made him a better student. These teachers invest their time not just in education, but in the personalities and the characters of these students, and they teach to that on some kind of amazing individual basis that I couldn't do it too. That is a treasure in our community, you guys. And as we've learned in Third Grade Academy, which many of you may be aware of, I'm the nurse that volunteers for that program in the summer, that waiting to the end of third grade to see whether children could read and move on, to put them in this academy that does a great job with these students, was a little too late. We now need to start a grade earlier. You need to start earlier. Not pull these programs and start later in 5th or 6th grade. You're talking about a foundation here of strength. And that's where we need to start, 3rd grade, 4th grade. Put this foundation down here so that by the time they're entering 5th grade and 6th grade, they're ready for this because that foundation has been laid. We can figure out this transportation issue. Thank you for listening.
Thank you.
That's all.
Thank you.
Thank you all very much for your comments. We appreciate that.
Now we move to the consent agenda. We have a motion to approve the consent agenda.
So moved.
Okay, motion made by Aaron Stevens and seconded by Jeff Slifer to approve the consent items. And that includes approval of minutes, human resources, accounts payable, and filing of reports, the monthly financial report. Any comments or questions? If not, all in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion carried. Now we're ready for our action items.
Okay, with our action items, the first is donations, and I'm assuming that's Karen?
This month, we had a total amount of donations of $1,621.50. We had a $500 donation from the Cellular Connection for the Teachers Rock program that provides school supplies to up to 10 teachers. And they did that at Fairview this year, at least as of right now. We may have more schools that they do that for, but I only have that for now. Stephen and Susan Tencher donated to the memory of Jack Perrine for early college in the amount of $50. Camara Guard donated to the Charles Michael Morgeson Scholarship in the amount of $25. The Hibbard Student Council donated to the Life Skills Student Playground Fund in the amount of $321.50. West End Bank, as well as David Stidham, First Bank Richmond, Dr. Timothy Hirons, and David Brown donated to the boys golf team, and that total donation was $725. So we thank each one of these donors for their generous contributions to our community schools, and we ask that the board approve these.
Need a motion, please? Motion made by Dixie Robinson, seconded by Kelly Baumgardner. Comments or questions? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion carried.
Okay, next we have the policy 1543, and this is for the second reading and adoption. And this is the policy that we looked at earlier, the non-renewal of administrative contracts. And we had a section that we could leave or delete. And with the advice of the attorneys from ISBA and our own attorney, Ron Cross, he suggested perhaps that we could delete the statement that required a 45 advance notice. And so it's the policies we looked at before with just the deletion of that last segment.
Okay, motion made by Susie Hively, seconded by Suzanne Darengowski. Comments or questions? Seeing none, all in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion carried.
Okay, next, we would like to move through for a second reading, section 7,000 of our policies, actually, plural.
Okay, motion made by Jeff Slifer, seconded by Aaron Stevens. Comments or questions? Dixie?
I'm sorry, but I found some more corrections. And it's mostly just typos. One place in policy 7440 where too much of a sentence was struck, that didn't make it a complete sentence. So just a correction on that. I'll give these to Ally.
Okay, can we give it to Ally and get those corrected and then move it
Yes.
forward for next time as well?
Okay.
Does that work?
And I have the rest of them here.
Thank you. Thank you very much. We'll get that done.
It's good to have an English teacher on the board.
Well, it was reading all of them.
Are we approving the policies with these corrections?
With the
noted?
corrections, and then we'll present them, we'll at least have copies for the board to review, to make sure they're correct. Is that okay to do it that way?
Are we going to take a vote tonight?
Yeah, if you could, do you feel
Okay.
comfortable doing that?
Yes,
If
I
so, we
think
could
so.
get those, but we'll ensure that they're done and you can review them.
Right, so the only ones that'll come back for a vote at our next meeting will be the ones that we corrected.
Right, correct. Okay, yes.
Okay, so I need a motion.
We already did that, didn't we?
We did the
Before we
Yeah.
had discussion.
Okay, we had discussion.
Before we
Thank
have the
you.
correction from Ms. Dixon.
Yes, we did. Thank you very much. It takes a village. So all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion carried.
Okay. And then Third Grade Academy, this is our summer program, and Mr. Millis.
We have a proposal to accept the RFP from Third Grade Academy and Every Child Can Read. I love them here to 10 tonight. They could probably make my recommendation for me here. We would propose again this year to have the students that are not able to pass iRead 3 to also attend Third Grade Academy. We've partnered on that. It's a year-by-year basis, mainly because of the intensity we can have with those students with our 10-to-1 ratio and the instructional assistants. We're looking to kind of migrate to a second grade, which we can still, I think, call a Third Grade Academy as we look at the program, as well as some additional students that would be ELL and try to meet the needs of these students. We've had a lot of success over the years, and our dollar amount that RCS would be responsible for would be $65,000, and they would then pick up the rest of the dollar amount.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Millis. I need a motion, please. Motion made by Kelly Baumgartner, seconded by Dixie Robinson. Comments or questions? Suzanne?
Have we seen recently any data from this program? As far as I know, it's a minor investment, and I think everyone agrees that it's helpful. I just was wondering if we'd seen any recent.
Yeah, last year, Mrs. Phillips was the director, and she did do a report and shared data. Our iRead 3 students that take the makeup, we were in the 80s and then moved into 90%, and actually we're a little higher the previous year. So we're meeting that state goal. Our students meeting the 90%. So until we see if it's a different test or how that's going to work, we feel like it's been a successful formula. They kind of like the number because of the sites and the class sizes and the teachers they've had to work around 100 students. So last year we started one pilot, maybe two, of second graders, and they found that to be successful. So I think that can get a little more towards the philosophy, and I think Mr. Ahaus would say that too, as far as when it was designed. by Mr. Josie and Mr. A. House and Dr. Borf when they began working on that. So we can have, Pam Barr will be the director this year, and we can have her report on some of the data. They do some of their own internal assessments. If we could keep the same assessments for 2 years in a row, then we could compare spring and fall, but it's like
Understand
we're running into that. so.
Right, I understand that. But as far as success rate, I guess that's what I was just trying to
Yeah.
say. The success rate for the students that
Yeah.
have participated has been positive.
Yes.
And we will also be looking at the success rate of the second graders that attended last year
That's
and how
what
they
I-
did on iRead3 this year. Those results will be
Kind of
here
why I
March
asked the question, because I
31st.
knew we haven't really, I knew that.
Right.
We were kind of separated from that, so that's why I asked. Okay.
Aaron?
I like the fact that there's an emphasis in this with looking to expand that to second graders as well. I think we're all in agreement that, gearing this toward third grade is fantastic. However, if we can even implement this with the inclusion of second graders, it gives us and I know that Ms. Hoffer had even spoken about that with building foundations at an earlier level, but even in this sense, including second graders may actually come to fruition and create more or even less of the need of it at a third grade level as well. So.
Okay, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carried.
Okay, we are now ready to move to transportation?
No, Math science.
Math science. Oh, we have still math science for Mark. I'm skipping.
And we had
skipping his
a nice
item.
endorsement from one of our parents. We have been blessed with math and science grants with Purdue University in the last 5 years. And we started with our science grant. Jenny Hicks, who used to be in charge of the science area in the Department of Ed, now oversees that. And so, she will tell anyone in Indiana, Richmond Community Schools, in terms of our science and math right now is most aggressive in how we are going about our staff development. We have excellent attendance with our teachers. They do get a small stipend, but I think they have been able to translate that into our science kits. And now with this grant, it's to develop that applied connection between science and math. So these are extensions they do, and they fit in very well with the new Indiana standards. This is a grant which we have to approve that 1 year cycle of the grant. It's a 3-year grant. This will be the second year. And we have STEM teachers who are being supported and paid through the grant. Then they do the training and prepare for our science camp during the summer. And also there's some in-class observations that they're doing with the teachers and their science kits. And one of the challenges with the science kits, when we hire new teachers, that they have a lot of things on their plate, but the science kits presents another one. So this has been very helpful to do that. So I'd ask approval for the grant.
Okay, I need a motion. Jeff Slifer,
So second.
and seconded by Aaron Stevens. Comments or questions?
I like approving grants for this size.
Absolutely.
Could I just would like to say, I've been very excited to watch over the years the implementation of this program and just to hear from students how excited they are. My gal I mentor just won't miss science. She just loves her science days. So.
Great. That's always good to hear. It's all about kids. Okay, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion carried.
Okay.
Now.
Now we move to transportation. This will be exciting for all of us. Would you just put the one slide up for us? Actually, we have one action item on for transportation this evening, and then we have a discussion of another transportation item. But let's speak to this, and I think this will be helpful as a start. For example, as we started out looking at ways that we could cut transportation cost, we first looked at a number of things. One of big concern to us was actually at the Hibbard program, where our students were on buses to get from one place to another. And as we heard from the principal there, that sometimes it was 10:30 in the morning by the time students had come for the early classes at one building and then had been shuttled finally to Hilbert for the rest of the day. Is that a correct statement for us here? Anyway, so we looked at the way that we could eliminate the shuttles, rethinking math, band, orchestra, and the teachers would then travel among buildings as opposed to shuttling students. And we've worked again to look at staffing in ways that we could send teachers there and then in addition to that, retrieve some savings by not shuttling the students and keeping them on buses for a long period of time in the morning. And we'd like to start that, of course, in the next school year. And then to change the location of the Wings program. We know again, and we see students coming in and out of schools midday, and that requires shuttling of students and taking them, to and from schools at various times during the day, and that we would still provide the Wings program in the home schools. The teacher would travel to the schools versus the students back and forth. Then create a unified schedule, and this is a bit redundant here, create a unified schedule for all grades at Hibbard, which would mean that they would have the same arrival time for all the students, as opposed to, as I mentioned earlier, the students that would go to other buildings for classes and then be transferred later on to Hilbert. Modify after-school transportation at Hilbert, Dennis, and Test. And we said modify. And we said in the next year, you'll note decrease or continue after-school transportation at Hibbert, Dennis, and Test. And this would start next year. There are other funds, in addition to transportation funds, that we allocate to buildings. Those are what we call the title funds. And so there would still be opportunities for some transportation, but not to the extent that we have shuttled for the after-school in the prior year.
Dr.
Prior
Poindexter, if I
years,
could make
actually.
one correction.
Okay.
On number 3, when we talk about create a unified schedule
Yeah.
for all grades, you had mentioned that kind of relates to number 1. Actually, it means 3rd and 4th graders would have the same start time as the 5th, 6th, 7th, and 8th
Right.
grades there. So
Yes.
they'd be all 3rd through 8th would be the same
Right.
time. Right now, they're at different times, so we have different.
Right, they're arriving at different
transportation
times,
needs.
yes.
Correct. So
That's correct.
they're arrival in the morning, so.
So this is what we looked at, and the board had thought perhaps that this would meet the needs of all of us that are concerned about where our students go and how we move them next year. So we're actually asking if you would take action to approve.
Okay, I need a motion, please, to approve this recommendation. Motion made by Susie Hively, seconded by
I'll second it.
Jeff Slifer. Comments or questions? I was wondering, Dr. Poindexter, if you have a dollar amount attached to this.
Yes, we do have a dollar amount.
Particular recommendation.
Yeah, it's good that you asked that. That actually would save us about $165,000.
Okay.
So we call that, I guess, as the board said, the low-hanging fruit, the things that we should do first that could actually be helpful for us instructionally, as far as giving us additional instructional time for the students as opposed to being on the bus. Now, we know that some instruction might occur on the bus, but not as much as in the classroom.
I just would like to comment that I see the other resource conservation, in addition to the financial one, is time. I see kids receiving services in their buildings
Less time on the
where
bus.
they aren't going to be spending time to and fro on the bus. And I would assume the greater the contact in the classroom, the greater the growth of the student.
Well, we would certainly all assume that, and I think that there'd be, any educator would verify that student contact time is important. And it certainly
Especially
saves,
for-
I guess we also look at fossil fuel. It also saves, protects the environment to a degree when we're able to cut down our buses going around.
Suzanne?
I would say especially for the pull-out wings, because on any given day, in order to do that efficiently, there's a bus on the east side and a bus on the west side. And so the first stop, obviously those children are on the bus quite a bit longer than the third stop. So the classroom time, I do think,
Yes.
could really be a save, so.
And I just want to say also that this particular recommendation has been discussed and at both our board meetings for the past, since January, I would say, and maybe even before January, but really intensely starting in January. And also, it has been discussed during our finance committee meetings, which are open to the public. And so we have had lots of conversations, lots of questions, lots of discussions, lots of looking at the dollars. And so we take these, this recommendation we've taken it very seriously. Aaron?
I'll wait till after Suzanne.
Oh, okay.
Can we re-clarify that number 3 does not put those 3rd and 4th grade full-timers back at their school yet?
No, it does
Right.
not, we did not deal with that at all in
Thank you.
this particular
I just want to make sure
booth.
that was clear.
We didn't, it does not, no.
If I could add some perspective on how we came up with number 1 and kind of where we're at. I worked with Mrs. Gibbs, Mr. Mops, and the dentist principal at the time on how we could do that. And if we go back in time, that was during our reallocation. We were closing several buildings and trying to, the general fund aspect of that was very critical. At that time, our transportation fund was a little healthier. So we thought we were very creative. I think we were enabling students to receive that instruction, primarily in algebra, and then be shuttled to Hibbert. But some students don't really get there until late morning. So at this point, with our transportation fund challenge and some of the other work we've been doing because of our general fund challenges with the schedule, et cetera, I think we've been able to feel we can have teachers go to the buildings now. So I think we've been very creative, but it does create some side effects. And it's probably not best to have kids on the bus that amount of time and also just to be spending the money on it. So just, I was involved with that number 1. I think we were very creative, but it has some side effects.
Thank you.
I was just reminded, maybe I need to clarify again. I may not have made this clear. This decision here does not deal with the 3rd, 4th issue that you're speaking so eloquently about tonight. It doesn't relate to that, so let me be clear about that.
I also wanted to ask, because our next, after we make this vote on this, our report and discussion topic is transportation.
Yes.
Are you going to give us, again, the amount of money that we are looking to deal with as far as our budget is concerned? Because I do think it's important that everybody realize that we're not talking about just a few $1,000s. We're
Yes.
talking about a lot of money that we have to save.
We spent a lot of time, and yes, we're prepared to give you a number that we feel confident in.
Okay, so do you want to do that in the next part?
Yes.
And we can go ahead and do the motion?
Yes, I think that'd be good to do
Okay,
that.
anybody else have anything that they would like to say about this particular recommendation? If not, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carried. Now we're on to reports, discussion topics.
Okay. Okay, as we go again to discussion of transportation, we realized, and just a little background on this, many of you may have heard of the circuit breaker, but it's something that we're not fond of here in our district. In 2012, with the circuit breaker, it affected the amount of dollars that we could get in transportation. And in that particular year, we had to take about $107,000 from the general fund to meet our transportation costs that year. did a little,
Cash balance.
I'm sorry, cash balance.
In the
But-
transportation fund.
yeah, and then then in 2014, we did not, we fared even worse. We had to take $295,000, again, to pay for the excess cost in transportation beyond what we could get through the normal tax levy for transportation cost. So you add that together, and that would take a cash balance down $400,000. And so this year, we would be looking at something similar if we're not able to cut enough. And the other issue that we face when we're looking at reducing a yearly budget is whatever we do, we'll only get recoup one half of that expenditure or loss in one semester. So when we think that we need to reduce cost, we realize if we were needing to reduce cost $400,000, $200,000, we would only recoup $100,000 during this next semester. And then the first semester and the next year that recoup the other costs. So when you're cutting and saying, we need to cut $400,000 or whatever, that does not mean that we're going to get that done in transportation by the end of 2015. Just wanted to be sure. Is that clear as mud? Takes your time to do that. So anyway, what we've done next, and we talked with a way to at least approach this, and we realized that it was going to be extremely difficult for us to get substantial reduction in expenditure in transportation if we did not look first at what we had previously called our magnet school, and that was ESA STAR, to see, because that's the school that's permitted transfers back and forth for the program that had been delivered there previously. And as we started to look at what we would do there, we realized that in order to make this work and actually have substantial impact on our transportation, that we would really have to do some tweaking of the boundaries, for the most part, that would affect to some degree all of our elementary schools. So we began that study, and it's taken us quite some time. I guess that discussion started, 4-5 weeks ago? And we've been working on that, and we've had spreadsheets that we had to just lay out across the desks to try to determine where we were getting money and how to make that happen. But I think one of the things that would be helpful for us to start would just be to look at the map, perhaps, as to how we have finally come to see that we can redistribute our students and get them in the 6 elementary schools.
Sorry.
While he's bringing that up, I have a question, I received a lot of emails today, and that's fine. Unfortunately, I was at work, so I didn't get a chance to read them all. Are we putting together a formal response? Are we going to do that? Because I think there's some misconceptions that need to be cleared up, and I just want to make sure that at least we got some kind of a response from where we're coming from right now.
Right.
That way, we've got the 2-week period.
I think there are several things that are going to take place in the next weeks, and I have communicated, hopefully with most of the people that have sent letters, that the board will be providing a response to at least somewhat of a response. It won't be as detailed, perhaps, as what will happen as time goes on, but yes, Kelly.
Just so we're clear, because it's what you just said, but I just want to clarify that that I think we've all received the same notes, but they will receive back one response from the board, because we don't, as a practice, answer individual emails. So I would hate for a parent to think that as individuals we didn't answer them, but we will answer them in the form of a response from the board.
Correct.
Thank you.
Okay, we have here, and just, you and his, we also have Ron back there that's helped us with this, so I'm sure he'll be glad to step forth if we need any additional elaboration. So, you want to begin, Mark?
So what we've done here is we've looked at taking Elizabeth Starr Academy, making it a neighborhood school again, and I'm going to use my red pointer on my left here.
Great.
And if you remember, if we take this rectangle here, that was what we were calling the Star District with the magnet, and then if that was feeding about half of the kids there, and then the rest of Star was the entire city of Richmond. So to help alleviate some of that pressure on the transportation, we said, let's see what happens when we make it a neighborhood school again. So what we're proposing here, or talking about an option, is taking the Star boundary north up to that North J Street area, up to the river, and this would encapsulate a lot of the Townsend kids and so forth, and putting them into the Star District, and that would give us all of these arrangements. In fact, give us full schools now as we've done this. So it would give Star we'd actually add a room there of one classroom. We've taken the Crestdale area. We still go south of 40 here and come down to L. So we're still picking up kids down there and transporting them up, but we could not get those 90-plus kids into Star. Just would not work right. So there's about 60 in this area in the Star, about 90 here, so it would have left Crestdale with several empty rooms. So we still had to keep this north or the south area. This map also includes an assumption. One of the recommendations of the boundary lines is, as we call, resetting the transferred students. So that means taking the transfer students around the district and putting back in the home school. So when we did that, as well as move the students from the Star District that are magnet students, Vale became pretty full. So thinking back, we used to have a dog leg left here on Vale down this kind of turquoise color here. To accommodate the new population, we're going to cut that off on 5th Street. Those west on 5th would be in this green area, which is our Westview population. So that would require a little different transportation, but it's not as costly as doing the entire city traveling. So they'd come across G Street down 5th, pick up those students in that area that we have in this little cutout here. If we look around the city, Charles District has not changed at all. We changed a little bit on that Crestdale, as I mentioned, just a little bit here in this southwest corner here. And Fairview has remained the same. So, so we have not changed the borders too much. When we talked about tweaking, this is what we were talking about. It was just doing as little as possible to upset the apple cart, if you will. And our numbers evened out with the schools and so forth. So that was one of the things that happens when we make that Elizabeth Starr Academy a neighborhood school again. So
between redistributing the Star students and then just tweaking that Westview border, we've managed to fill Westview up a little bit more.
That's the exciting thing too. We have an empty classroom at Westview right now. We can now fill that.
Okay.
We have 2 empty classrooms at Fairview, another classroom being used for the Fairview Boys and Girls Club. We would fill 2 of those classrooms at Fairview as well. And so you're saying, well, where's those classrooms coming from? We're going to relieve a little pressure off of Crestdale because they have the life skills.
Yes.
And we know from Mrs. Bergdahl, we're going to need another life skill classroom up there, so that's going to help pull that pressure off of Crestdale some. So
I'd just like to make a comment for everyone, that I think the board already knows this, is that when we place students back into schools, the neighborhood schools, as we have drawn the boundaries here, we didn't guesstimate. We actually know the names of the students who are being moved from place to place, one by one. So they're individuals. The students have been identified district-wide by address and the name, and then placed in the schools, to the point that we are able to go to each building of our elementary buildings, look at the floor plan, and look at the classroom numbers, in each of the buildings. So that's the depth of the study so far. Now, in doing this, and this is probably what has created the most concern. In doing this, we looked at the possibility of placing third grade back in the mix to see if there was room. We did this because, as we understood, the initial reason for moving third grade from Charles was a space issue. And as we were looking at this, we were not sure at all whether it was going to come out as a possibility. It is a possibility. We haven't taken action, but it is a possibility that that could happen as far as the space is concerned.
It was a space issue when we closed Garrison.
Yes.
And CR Richmond.
Prior to my arrival time.
We chose not to build extra classrooms on Charles, too. That was the other part of that equation, remember?
Yes.
And so, yeah.
I'm trying to save money.
Right.
Again.
As clarification too, I know there's some talk here about closing third and fourth grade, and there was mention of a transportation cost.
Yeah.
We have never presented that as a transportation cost savings to
No.
move the third and fourth grade back. In fact, what we
No.
proposed was to align that schedule, third through eighth. If we move them back, we don't really see a savings or a gain. It's kind of a net even. So that's from the transportation point of view.
That's correct.
It's just
That
kinda
was
even,
not,
so
no,
we did not-
that is not figuring into
I just
the
wanted to
equation as far as
clarify that, so,
transportation.
yeah.
When we ran the study, we ran it to see if we were able to place students in their neighborhood schools as we had done, would have done at any time, to see whether we actually could do it.
Would you expound on, you mentioned reset all students. Could you explain that a little bit more so that
Correct.
we all understand what the thinking is?
We have 401 or 402 students who now go to different schools than what their neighborhood school would be. 169 of those are magnet students that go to STAR, for example. So we have 200 and some students that are now being transferred to different schools across town. Now, not all of them have transportation needs. Some were transported by their parents or someone else, but there's a hefty number there that we are transporting because of maybe there wasn't enough room at their home school, so the district has decided, you hit a cap, we're going to transfer you to a different building across campus, and then we're going to provide transportation. So when you look at those costs and you look at those buses, they are transporting across town all over the place. It's a huge web. And what happens there too is when you you matriculate up from fourth grade to fifth grade, then you keep that school that you came from, and we're doing the same thing for test and dentist. So you're crisscrossing town for elementaries and for your middle schools. So resetting those transfer students means putting them back into their home school where they live, or as a neighborhood school. So, and those numbers have reflected that we are capable of handling those at all the schools.
So all of our students, K through 4, would be reset to their home schools.
K through 8.
Actually, we would do K through 8 because we would
Eventually,
want to pick
we
up
just
our
haven't gotten the
K through 7, and then the 8th
We
grade's
do.
matriculating up.
We
right?
have 142.
We actually do have the numbers on
Yeah,
the
we have
others, too.
142 5th through 8th grade students who would be returned to their school.
But that does not include early college, correct?
Correct. We are still having the Hibbert building be transported as they are for your logos and early college, life
It
skills.
would just be between Dennis and Test.
Just be Dennis and
Okay.
Dennis
Test,
and
not
Test,
Hibbert,
correct.
it's Dennis and
Right.
Test
No, it's
only.
just Dennis and
Correct.
Test.
So what grades in logos are you
We looked at
speaking
3rd
of?
and 4th, that's what you asked us to do, was what, if we,
Right.
could we figure the 3rd and 4th, moving them back, and so we did that.
Okay, I just wanted to clarify that.
Yes.
No.
Yeah.
So what happens is you have, over at Hibbert, you have 3 classrooms being used by 3rd and 4th grade. So by relieving that pressure, we're using 3 other classrooms in the district, one at Westview, a couple at Fairview, so it's just kind of a net. But we did look at that scenario to see that we could get those students back to their neighborhood schools, particularly Charles, We wanted to make sure there wasn't too much pressure over there, and they fit adequately, so.
Because those were that was where we were.
There was a high percentage
Right.
of Charles students that were being, that are going to Hibbard right now, so.
Because of space issues when we
Initially.
did our
Yes,
school closings.
Correct.
I think it's really important for us to note that the displacement is 402 students. 35 of those students are at Hibbard. But again, we have 367 students that are being moved as we go back to the neighborhood school concept.
Now, 169 of those, that gross total, are your magnet students at Star.
Correct.
And about 50 of those live in that area anyway, that kind of north
They
area.
live close to the school, they had just been going to other locations.
Correct, so they've
Correct.
elected to be magnet, so the net is not as high, but it isn't a significant number, so.
And tell me if I'm getting ahead, that I was
Cost?
going to ask the total cost.
Yeah, the cost for this, we're really sure that it can be around $155,000, so when you add the two together, that could be $320,000 for the combination of the two.
And if I might speak to that piece, if, as we were looking at this as even being an option and trying to know about how much we were talking about, when we looked at a route, just a bus going from one side of town to the other, because we do have quite a few that do that, you're looking at, we kind of thought an average of possibly 15 miles. And when you look at a 15-mile radius in time, that could be upwards of a half an hour or more. And so we calculated that based on the hourly rate that Student Transit has already given us. So you'll notice that everything is consistent in these costs that we have provided to you based on the hours and the cost of the total bus to run it for that length. So that's how we came up with the financials to back up what we know to be the possibility on this area.
Yes.
Well, I think one of the most frequent statements that I read in all of the mail that we've received is the thought that the high ability program is being dismantled, and so could you speak to that?
You know, I don't know. I can understand, concerns that any parent has when there's going to be movement of his or her child or the children. But we really have never given any thought at all to dismantling. Before we even moved into thinking about just the transportation issue and where that would lead us and whether we had space, we had begun a review of the high ability program for the reason of trying to be sure that we had the best high ability program we could have. That was absolutely something that the board supported. We put forth money to make that happen. We'll have the study at the end, in May. May. We would like to have had it earlier, but that's as soon as they can get the study done. So as far as the belief system here at the district level, and certainly from the board members that we have talked with, and we've talked with everyone, we want to serve all of our students, from the lowest to the highest. And we realize that it's equally important to serve all of those levels. So to neglect the high ability would be something that would be definitely not in conformance with our beliefs. I have spoken with the principal at Hibbard, and we have talked about options and ways of thinking about it to some degree. There are probably multiple delivery structures that work, but definitely we believe that we need to look at where students are and how we can take them to higher levels in learning.
Well, just from my understanding, back when we made the initial move from the third and the fourth graders, from Charles moving over, which was the main emphasis.
Yes.
Our lowest program is 5 through 8. And we're not, the third and fourth never really considered
As
lowest program.
I understand it, when it was moved there, it was to take care of a space issue. and it evolved, I guess, after having been moved. And the principal is here, she could certainly speak to that, but that's my understanding, that the third grade evolved into a program.
Could you please?
Nice try, though.
We know that especially for our younger students who could be at risk, the sooner we get them into services, the better. And we took it as an opportunity when the Charles students were placed at Hibbard that there was some inequity there in not also offering that same service to students from other buildings. And so Dr. Borf agreed, and we, rather than just 2 classrooms, we brought in 3 so that we could bring in students from the other elementary schools. And I did the calculations. I have a letter for you too. But those are the kids I'm most concerned about. Those are the kids that stand out in their classes and who need to be exposed to the same curriculum that their peers at Charles would be exposed to, because our intent is by the time they're in high school, they're competing and collaborating in the same AP classes, and they need to have the same access to high-ability services that the students at Charles would have. So it did initially begin as a program or a move to alleviate crowding, but we seized the day because it's a wonderful opportunity to be able to start services as early as we possibly can, and that is especially true for the younger students who are in areas that are less affluent and where they may not have all the background experiences for education that other students may have.
I would just make one other comment. When we started to review the high ability program, the conversation first occurred between me and the principal, and discussion, and likewise, you were very much in favor of our looking at the high ability program. So that didn't start from this office, because it had been a number of years since there had been a review of that program. And so it was a mutual concern about looking at the program in ways that we could make the program better.
Well, and I would just like to add to that we have a parent group that tries to meet on a monthly basis. And at that parent meeting, we take topics that the parents want to discuss. Sometimes the superintendent has agenda items, and many times the parents do. And the parents, many parents that have children in the Logos program brought some concerns about the program. And so I would say that it also came from parents.
Right. It was multiple sources.
Mm-hmm. So
It's true.
just wanted to add that. Susie.
Kelly.
Susie.
They both had their hands raised.
Kelly, you will be next.
Well,
Susie.
just as a point of clarification, because it is not, I'm a literal person.
Yes.
And it doesn't specifically say up there that we will continue to provide services for 3rd and 4th grade at Hibbard. And it doesn't say up there that we are sending 3rd and 4th graders from Hibbard back to their home schools.
It does not say that at this time, no.
And so we at this time are not planning. The way I interpret this is that the way it's presented is that 3rd and 4th grade will still be at Hibbard next year in the way that they are now.
We have not, that decision has not been made. We have said there is space that decision would yet to be made. The board has not taken action on that.
Thank you for clarifying, because I wanted to know.
Kelly?
Well, that was pretty much exactly what I wanted to know, but I also want to clarify, and I know you did this, but I just want to clarify again that we're not talking about dismantling the program.
Absolutely not. As
Because-
we see it, again, we would not have begun our action to try to see how we could improve the program if dismantling it were the intent.
Well, I mean, I see this as an opportunity
I hope
to
I
grow
hope
the
it is.
program.
I hope it is.
And I would just like to add from our perspective that at the last board meeting, we were directed by the board to run the data, just run the numbers.
Absolutely.
And so I think it was
Because
just
we
an
have to.
exploratory step. It's how I interpreted it, that we'll just look at the numbers and give you that data.
Dixie?
Well, and I would like to say too that initially, I mean, when we closed schools, you have to remember that back in the 70s, we had 12,000 kids in our school district. We now have about 5,000. You cannot keep all your buildings open for 5,000 kids when initially it was 12,000. So it was done on a numbers basis. We had to save money. Now we have, this last time we closed 3 more schools because our enrollment was still going down. We've lost industry, we've lost population in Richmond, and then, of course, the circuit breaker came in, which has cost us more money in transportation funds, and we're also going to be facing money that we have to save in general fund, and the state is very strict on how you can transfer money between funds. They're very strict. And I'm sure Karen could address that, but it would be very long because Indiana education finance is extremely complicated. And I just wanted to say that no RCS board member wants to disrupt any programs. We have a lot of wonderful things going on in Richmond Community Schools. And we don't want to disrupt classes that are working well and benefit children, but we are responsible to all taxpayers in Richmond, even the ones who don't have children in school. And as elected officials, we have to find the most effective and efficient way to run our school system so we don't wind up like other school systems in Indiana that can't provide any transportation for their children.
Or music, or
Yeah.
art, or GT.
Yeah.
Dixie has expressed this very, very well, but maybe it would be good too, because we haven't had you in our audience to explain some other things that we've tried to do. We have been working for a couple of months now to try to reduce the general fund budget. So we've been talking about transportation most recently, but we began looking at ways and are continually looking every day at ways to reduce our general fund budget. So it's not just that our transportation is going to exceed the revenue that we'll get to support transportation. Our needs in the general fund budget, which actually includes all the costs for teachers in our instructional program. But teachers, our staff really takes the highest percent, probably
Salary and benefits are about 97% of our budget.
97% of our budget. And it would likely, I'll just say this very openly, it would likely take additional teachers if we were to have the 3rd, 4th grade at Hibbard. Because if we were able to, with the teachers we have now, we could reset into the neighborhood schools and not increase teachers. It's a wash, as we've looked at it. So I would not be honest with you if I did not say that it would probably, yes, cost more money, but it would come from the general fund, which is as strapped as the transportation fund. I'm not saying that to indicate that it cannot happen, but I want to be straightforward with you as far as the finances are concerned.
Well, and let's put a number to that. The general fund deficit this year is 688,000.
678 right now, without a budget
Projected
from
for
the
next
state.
year is over 800,000, I believe.
Depends on the budget. I can't
So-
even project that because I have heard
Right
two
now, we're
different
projecting
budgets
over
go
8,000 on
through,
our
and they're
cash,
very
800,000 on our cash flow,
Yeah.
so.
So how do we get 800,000 or maybe 900,000 reduction. So we're looking at everything, everywhere, to try to reduce the cost.
And trying not to affect staffing and programs.
We're trying with
They
our.
go hand in hand.
I did want to say one more thing, and that's the fact that through all the changes that we have had to make in the last few years to save money and to save programs for our kids and to save wraparound services for our kids, our children have still excelled in Richmond Community Schools. Our
Right.
test scores have gone up. We have an A high school. Our graduation rate is at its highest ever. And I am positive that it is done through the extremely hard work that our teachers and our administrators at this table have put forth. And I appreciate all they've done and the support of our parents. So I did want to say that.
Well, we ran the numbers, and it's kind of a numbers game, and I appreciate the professor here. He knows math and so forth, but we still want to do a next step. We have some realities we want to talk about, and we have some dates coming up that are going to be affected by some of our decisions. So I put together a slide here, and I'm going to ask for a next step. We want to provide a recommendation at our next board meeting, which is the April 8th. And as the last time we stood up here, if there's an option that we've presented in that last slide is off the table, let us know. We can focus on the ones that are on the table, but we would like to bring that back to you. And if I could have one moment of clarification, I don't think he's here, Mr. Wolpe from the Boys and Girls Club. We have not discussed any transportation changes for the Boys and Girls Club as far as transporting students there. That was never an option. We feel that that's an outstanding program, and anytime you can take a mass of kids to one spot, that does save money. So as long as they're open, we can get kids there, and we still plan to do that. So
I think one of the things that might help is when we talked about modifying the after-school, I think we were looking at it more from a discipline point of view, not from.
Those late buses.
the late buses at the 3, yes,
So-
you're exactly right. It wasn't the late bus or the
We
bus
probably
to.
could explain that one a little better than what
Right.
we did.
So that was more of the Dennis Test Hibbard late bus, as they call it, and some of it dealt with the
those
students.
weren't just for kids who had after-school detention. That's for kids who are doing athletics or who are
Clubs and-
in clubs. And we want to try to support that.
Right.
And Mr. Wolpe's been receptive. He and I have talked a couple times about which schools they transport and which schools student transit or Richmond transports. So we hadn't made any changes this year, but we are looking at
Right.
that to see if we can
So
make
you're not
any
crossing
adjustments.
town,
Right, so
you know,
that
with each other, so.
make that the most efficient also.
Right.
And we didn't make changes this year, although we kind of talked about it at the beginning of the year. But we will be looking at that, I think, and he's open to that.
Yes, that's great.
Let's really focus on that April 8th date. Whatever we do here as far as this cost reduction and how we're going to reset students, it would be important, I think, for us to make that decision by April 8th. Kindergarten Roundup follows that next week, and we want to be sure that we have that event, that we're able to provide for all of the parents that come to enroll the kindergarten students their neighborhood school, so that they can be welcomed and
Right.
introduced and start to connect with the new families coming in.
And will someone make sure, since Mr. Wolpe came and spoke, that he is communicated with?
Yes,
and
we will make that communication.
that is clarified so that he, okay, thank you.
Thank you.
And are there any options that were presented that are off the table or new ones
Not
that are on the
yet.
table? Okay,
Okay.
clarifying.
Okay, thank you. We are ready for our second public commentary.
Nobody else has signed up.
No one else has signed up. Anyone wishing to speak again? If you haven't spoken, or if you wish to speak again, please come forward. We ask you to please state your name.
My name is Chris Nelson. My wife and I are business owners along East Main Street. I recently just retired from the Army after 20 years, and we were going to private school. Our kids, my daughter Johanna, who's 9, and my son Theodore, who is 5 and is at Charles, we made a decision based on my retirement and us being in business, at least for this past school year, that we would try public schools because of our unforeseen financial future. And we were very nervous about that, and I would just like to express that I am absolutely floored by the level of education that my daughter has received in 4th grade, and that she is challenged, and I think she is challenged there, and she is in a learning environment where her surrounding classmates, which I think is important, that you have that institution there with walls that can support that it is a society of learning within those laws, and I feel that it's a continual importance, value added for our community, as a business person, as someone that has fallen in love with the city, and that this esteemed group will continue to try to find some way to continue to support the 3rd and 4th grade program. My son is at Charles, and he is with a great teacher at Charles, but she is always challenged with trying at that level to again get everybody to center mass, and I think sometimes he feels, and she helps add to his education, but he is really looking forward to one day joining his sister in third grade at that program, and he is aspiring and doing extra work that is needed because he wants also to maybe possibly have that opportunity in 3rd grade to go to Hibbert School. And it's something that, as bed and breakfast owners, as we talk to our guests from all around the country, they are very impressed with the school system, that they have this community of higher learning within that program. So thank you, and hope you would consider continuing that program.
Thank you very much. Anyone else wishing to speak?
I probably don't need it to just.
Well, just so that I didn't get up for nothing.
If I can get it. My,
Loud voice.
There you go.
my name is Mason, and I'm in the 3rd grade at Hibbard, and I'm being challenged at Hibbard, and I just don't want my school to close.
Thank you, Mason.
Thank you, Mason.
Anyone else wishing to speak? One last time. This is your chance. Okay, thank you very much. We will move on to board reports, old business. Do you have anything to report on the Finance Committee?
Well, in the board update that they sent out, they pretty much covered a lot of what we're talking about at the Finance Committee. I think the importance of it there is, out of the number, I forget the number of sections that's within the contract, at our next meeting, over the course of the next month, prior to our next meeting, the members of the Finance Committee are supposed to go through the different sections that we did not get through, and that's section 10 and on, and email some questions or concerns or thoughts to me, so I can compile them, and maybe, hopefully, the next finance meeting, we can get completely through the contract, because a lot of the things.
This is in regard to the transportation.
Contract. A lot of the things that we'll need to address or come back with, as was mentioned in the update, talks about the performance metrics, what types of metrics we want it, those types of things. Because as I stated before, we really have three options. Go back to Sodrel and give them a proposal that they would accept, or take transportation back out for bids, or take transportation over again ourselves. So those are the three options that we have, and I think we just need to have a clear understanding of what our expectation is out of the transportation department before we can even answer those three questions. So, but the goal is, at the next finance meeting, is to get through the contract as is, and we're using that as a basis points for discussion. So a lot of good information has come out, and whoever drafted the board update did a fairly accurate job on the transportation piece as far as the discussion went, so.
This really isn't old business, it's new business, but we all received an email from Misty concerning the opportunity to speak with the radio station 101.7, and that would be done after the following day, after our board meeting. It would be done from our home or in the car or wherever we might be, because we would have a conversation over our phone rather than like we used to do. We used to go to the radio station afterwards, or the next day. So I think that we need to have a conversation as to what you're all thinking about that possibility. Anybody have any? Suzanne?
It's a pretty brief period of time. It seems like it would be worthwhile to try to see if we can get, one of the reasons why we started doing that before, when we did it before, there was a little more time then, but we started doing that because not everybody gets to watch the meeting, and there's only so much that the newspaper can do to sort of summarize. And so it gave us the opportunity to sort of explain what happened, explain the big items that happened. And so I feel like we would need to do a little bit of, I don't know what the word would be, homework, or we would need to sort of decide what those things should be, because otherwise you could get distracted in the brief time that you're going to have this conversation. But I think it's a worthwhile thing to try, for sure. But like I said, we probably would want to sort of decide, or have one of us decide, or sort of take the notes with that in mind, and then kind of get consensus. Okay, this is what I think the high points are, and then whoever's doing that interview then would have at least some notes to go on.
We could probably do that at the end of our meetings, kind of synthesize. Susie?
Misty, I had a point of clarification about that. Conceptually, I think it's a really good idea. Anytime we can increase our opportunity to communicate and share what's going on, that's always going to be a good thing. I have a memory of back in the day, people driving out to the radio station and trying to be there at 7 or quarter of. And I didn't notice, or maybe I just read past it, is there a time window for this? Is it, I think it's a short time window?
Well, as far as when you're on the air, is that the first part?
No,
the length of time
I'm just
is
thinking
just
about
5 to 7 minutes. I mean, it's not
right,
going to
no,
be very
I was
long.
actually thinking more about, are we talking 6:30, 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock?
What time of day?
Yeah, the time of day can be really up to us if we want to do 7 o'clock, and I think the call-in is at 7, but you'll be there on air, and there'll be some conversation with either Jen or Phil Quinn on what kind of the highlights need to be. And Suzanne's right. I mean, be in agreement of 3 bullet points that you would like to hit in that period of time, or 8. So those were the 2 time options that were offered.
7 or 8, basically.
Okay, thank you.
Kelly?
Kind of just to piggyback on what Suzanne said, we always provided them with an agenda. Well, I always did when I went out there before. That really is helpful if they have the same thing as we have. And I think you could just pick a part of the agenda almost to go over the reports or the discussion or whatever.
And I'd be more than happy to sort of take that and send them an email right before we finish for the night and say,
that would be
here's what our
helpful.
topics are.
That would be very
If-
helpful for them.
But I think that it's going to require that for it to be effective.
I agree.
Is what I think.
That would be helpful.
So, is everybody, do we have consensus that this would be? And then do we have consensus that everyone will take a turn?
That's a fair question.
So, Erin said yes.
Sure.
Sure.
I'll take a turn.
Okay.
I'll take it under advisement.
This
You
actually
did fine at
would be a
this.
little easier
I
than
think so.
previously because not as much
yeah.
time, but also if it can be done.
Don't
you
have
know,
to
from
drive
your-
out. I mean, the good news before is it was at least worth your while to drive out because we had a nice period of time.
Right,
But
right.
so it's nice that they're offering the option not to drive out for 5 minutes.
Is this is just to discuss the meeting, this is not for an actual discussion with call-in.
Right.
No, it really is.
There's no time.
Well, I was gonna say, because
Yeah, no, it
7
really
to 8
is.
is my
How did it
busiest time
go?
at work, so I mean,
Right.
if I'm gonna do it, I could call in at 6:30 and say, here's what we talked about.
Yeah.
I mean, there's
guess
no
we could
interaction.
record.
That's
There is,
probably
That's
doable
possible.
too.
there's
If
no
it's you.
interaction with,
No, there'd be no way to really do that, I don't think. Not with 5 minutes,
That's
because
what I
it would
was-
take us 5
was the
minutes to
hardest
get it.
Yeah,
part,
the
the
interaction is
call
with
in.
the.
Yeah.
is
I
the,
love that part.
You love the call-in part?
I absolutely did.
I broke out in a sweat every time.
Okay, so then Misty, would you be willing to make contact and let
Oh,
them
sure.
know?
Absolutely.
And then we would start this on April the 9th,
Okay.
after
That'd be great.
our next meeting. Okay, great.
put me last on the
Anything
list.
else with,
Oh, I did want to
Old
mention
business.
a couple of things from the communication and marketing group. I know you guys got the information about the tours on Tuesday, and that's starting to make its way out. And basically, how that came about is we have often talked about how misinformation is sort of the enemy of ours, and so we feel like there's a lot of people who maybe don't have children in school who don't have the full story of all that is amazing, especially at Richmond High School. And so we started offering tours on Tuesday led by
Dwayne Hodges.
Dwayne Hodgen. And it has been received really well. In fact, we had our first group of realtors out, which I think was an excellent group to start with. Because as Mr. Brunton said, that is a group that does talk to a lot of potential families of students. And so I think it will probably constantly evolve, but I think it's a really good start, and there's some further interest in it from even realtors, right? A couple more realtors. So I think that that could be a really good addition to our list of things. Also, I wanted to make sure that we said on this video that that the enrollment or the kindergarten rocks and preschool rules, rocks and rules, okay. April 16th, at the Tiernan Center, and it's at what time?
5 to 7.
5 to 7. So I wanted to make sure and get that out because that's really important. It's such a fun way to get kids signed up for school, and there'll be stations for the students. There'll be some supplies that they'll get. There will also be a bus out there so they can get an idea of what it's like to be on a school bus. So that's always fun too. So I think those are important things. And then lastly, we have to make sure, because I don't think we've had the opportunity to talk about Saturday and how proud we are of the boys basketball team. That is a pretty awesome. Did somebody clap? I'll clap. But that was just such a fun ride with that group of really excellent young men representing the school. And I think that our community should be congratulated on the support that they gave. 4 buses went down full of kids. Hundreds of people went down. It looked like it was Tiernan Center. So
we
thank
are
you.
proud. I wanted to ask you, Suzanne, and tours on Tuesday is at the high school.
Correct.
And the schedule, do people just call and then a schedule is developed, or is it every Tuesday, or how
It's
can?
every Tuesday, 10 o'clock and 1 o'clock. And we do request that they call here. They can call here and ask for me or Bridget Hazelbaker, and we will get them scheduled with Mr. Hodgen. Or they can call the high school to get that scheduled. We did, with the realtors, we did do a different day for them, but it still worked out for what we needed to.
Okay.
Yeah.
We had a breakfast for the realtors here in the foyer of the building, and what was really interesting, that a number of our former employees, teachers here, are now realtors, so Mr. Millis was able to see his social studies teacher again as a realtor.
Oh, Bill.
Did you start breaking out in sweat or anything?
He said, I have students over 60, and I said, yes, I'm one of them.
Oh, there you go.
Did you start thinking about pigs?
Dixie.
She mentioned the basketball team, but I also wanted to mention our choirs
Thank
who
you.
have continuously excelled in Chicago, did a wonderful job, and also the speech team
I was gonna say, that's
who's
the other one, yep.
at state finals. So there's just a lot
I
of
think the
wonderful
drum line did
things.
exceptionally
Drum
well, too.
line. There's just a lot of things. We could go on and on about all the good things that are happening with our kids, because they work hard.
Anything else before we go into superintendent search? Oh.
I just want to say that people may not realize that the school board was off getting educated these last few days, and had a wonderful opportunity to hear some amazing people and I'm very excited about some of the ideas that I heard about. And Ron Mays out there, I've got a website for you have to look at, so.
Okay, on to the superintendent search. Just a brief update to say that we are planning for second interviews coming up soon, and we are moving ahead through the process. So that's really all I have to report, but we're moving right on. So we are ready to preview the upcoming meeting and events.
Well, obviously, in our upcoming meeting, we'll be talking about transportation once again.
Really?
And making some decisions based on what we now know about what we can do as far as our resetting the boundaries and redistributing our students. I think we have real confident data, at least from what we are able to do, checking in multiple ways.
Although some students have probably moved since that was done.
That's true.
Some will move, but other than that, we're confident in what we have, so that we'll be able to take care of that, get that behind us. That's our big one for the next meeting.
Okay.
Linda, I think the board, I think we would all agree that we really appreciate the amount of work that this administrative team
absolutely.
has put in concerning our directives. I know it's been overwhelming, and you've done it in a very timely manner, but I know it's taken hours and hours of work and frustration, and we do appreciate everything that you have done.
Absolutely.
It's been very helpful.
It's all to the good end, so it's our pleasure.
Aaron.
One other note of appreciation, that's to all the parents that came out tonight and spoke with such fervor in regards to the education of their children. I really appreciated hearing them also talk about the possibility of additional partnerships and efforts made by them to help us and to make this thing work. And believe me, even though we do not respond by protocol, we do not respond to you when you come to the microphone and speak to us. And multiple notes, everything taken, your words, I think I've got 4 pages of them, but your words did not fall on deaf ears. And there will be continuous communication. So we partner with you and we make it work for you.
Well, if I could add to that, not just parents, but students
Oh, yeah.
and a teacher or two, maybe. So, thank you for coming and being advocates for students. That's what we are all about. So, we do appreciate it. We are now ready for our press conference. Anyone from the press? No? Okay. Now we're ready for our bell ringer.
Yes. Well, kind of some bad news, but good news at the same time. We've had a principal that's been absent this week with the flu. So Mark and I have just kind of taken turns running over to check to see if things are going well in this particular building. I guess I won't mention the building since we don't want to have everyone know that we have a principal ill in from this building. But anyway, I have just been so pleased as going in and out of that building with the office, the front office staff, and how they're taking care of things and their consideration. And I've had a chance to observe the interaction as parents come in to the building and how they're greeted. And it's a family feeling as the parents come into that building. So I'm just excited to share that. We have great people.
Adjourned.